November 1941. The Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. Acting Reich Protector Reinhard Heydrich establishes the Theresienstadt ghetto, which is located in the fortress town of Teresin, about 60 kilometers north of Prague. Though Jews whom the Germans deport to the ghetto think that it is a place from which they will return home after the war is over, Theresienstadt serves mainly as a transit camp for them en route to extermination camps. At a nearby fortress in Theresienstadt, the Nazis also set up a prison, the so-called Small Fortress, which is the largest of its kind in the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. Unlike the Theresienstadt ghetto, where the Jews are detained, the Small Fortress serves as a prison for the political opponents of the Nazi regime, Czech resistance members, and prisoners of war. In addition to the prison guards themselves, who often treat the prisoners with sadistic contempt, prisoners are also abused by some of the civilians who live in Theresienstadt. Among those who make life miserable for the internees is the daughter of the commanding officer of the Small Fortress. Her name is Johanna Jöckel. Johanna Jöckel was born in 1926 in Offenbach am Main, then part of the German Empire, and she had a younger sister Elfriede. Her father, Heinrich Jöckel, a World War I veteran and a car painter by profession, was one of the many Germans dissatisfied with the country's post-war development. The world economic crisis caused her father to close his business, and the family lost their livelihood, as unemployment in Germany was high and it was very difficult to find permanent employment. The Great Depression, which started in 1929, played a significant role in the emergence of Hitler as a viable political leader in Germany. Deteriorating economic conditions in Germany in the 1930s created an angry, frightened, and financially struggling population open to more extreme political systems, including fascism and communism. Hitler had an audience for his anti-Semitic and anti-communist rhetoric that depicted Jews as causing the depression. Johanna's father succumbed to the lure of the Nazi Party's promises and became its member in 1931. When Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany on the 30th of January 1933, Johanna Jöckel, called Hana by her family and friends, was 6 years old. Her father became a member of the SS at the beginning of that year. Following his appointment as Chancellor, Hitler was determined to overturn the military and territorial provisions of the Treaty of Versailles. By overturning the treaty, the German government sought to incorporate ethnically German territories into the Reich. In February 1938, Hitler replaced the German Foreign Minister Konstantin von Neurath with Joachim von Ribbentrop, a Nazi Party member and former ambassador to Great Britain, who advocated a more aggressive German foreign policy. Germany then moved to acquire new territories using the threat of war. In February, Hitler pressured Austrian Chancellor Kurt Schuschnigg into signing the German-Austrian Agreement, which brought Nazis into the Austrian cabinet, and in March 1938, Germany carried out the Anschluss, the annexation of Austria, after ensuring that Italy would not object. Even though the leaders of the West saw the Anschluss as an invasion, not one government made a move to stop Hitler, who without interference felt free to embark upon the next step of his scheme to conquer all of Europe. The next step came 6 months later, in September 1938, when Hitler threatened to unleash a European war unless the Sudetenland, a border area of Czechoslovakia, on which the ethnic German population lived, was ceded to Germany. The leaders of Britain, France, Italy and Germany held a conference in Munich between the 29th and 30th of September 1938, and agreed to the German annexation of the Sudetenland in exchange for a pledge of peace from Hitler. To this conference, which was also known as the Munich Betrayal, the Czechoslovaks were not even invited. Less than 6 months later, on the 15th of March 1939, in flagrant violation of the Munich Agreement, Nazi Germany invaded and occupied the Czech provinces of Bohemia and Moravia. Adolf Hitler himself arrived in Prague, and on the 16th of March 1939, by proclamation from Prague Castle, established the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. After the outbreak of the war, Johanna's father became head of the internment camp located in the northeastern part of the Protectorate. After this camp was closed in the winter of 1939, Jöckel was transferred to the Gestapo office in Prague, and on the 10th of June 1940, Jöckel was appointed as a commander of the police prison in the so-called Small Fortress in Theresienstadt, where he became a master over the lives of the inmates. Although the Theresienstadt ghetto established a year later in the Great Fortress had nothing to do with the Gestapo prison in terms of organization and administration, Jewish prisoners were repeatedly transferred from the ghetto to the Small Fortress. The reason was often a violation of the rules issued by the SS in the ghetto, such as breaking the ban on writing letters. Transfer to the Small Fortress, where there was a Jewish cell in the first courtyard, was usually the equivalent to a death sentence. The conditions of imprisonment were brutal, and prisoners were often severely beaten as soon as they arrived. The food rations were reduced as the war progressed and eventually fell below survival level. The prescribed 370 grams of bread were only issued in the early stages of the war, and later the rations fell to 250 grams. The cells were overcrowded, cold and dank, and prisoners slept on 3-story bunk beds. The hygienic facilities were catastrophic, and there were only 2 toilets for 500 prisoners. The Small Fortress had a capacity of about 1,200 prisoners, and if necessary, up to 2,000. In 1944, Heinrich Jöckel had a 4th yard added, doubling the capacity. At the end of the war, the prison housed about 6,000 prisoners in terrible conditions. In Theresienstadt, all the guards and their families lived in the Herrenhaus, a manor house right on the grounds of the fortress. Many of those wives also worked as guards in the women's block of the prison. Johanna lived in the Herrenhaus with her 4-year younger sister Elfriede and her mother. In 1942, when Johanna was 16, her mother died of peritonitis. Johanna, the commander's young and beautiful daughter, suddenly found herself without her mother's supervision, and her reckless nature was allowed to show. Like her father, she regarded the prisoners of Theresienstadt with German superiority. She never became a guard, but she made it her business to be involved in life in the fortress. Johanna often flirted with the SS officers and had several love affairs with guards. According to the testimony of one Holocaust survivor, Johanna did not behave any better than her father, who was known for being tough and ruthless. Heinrich ordered several Russian prisoners to build a swimming pool for his daughters. The prisoners were so tired they could hardly walk and could not even carry the bricks properly. Jöckel's daughters were watching the impoverished Russians and would take off their swimsuits to tease them. The moment the inmates dared to look, Johanna would unleash the dogs on them, who would tear them to pieces. Johanna allegedly sexually abused some prisoners and had sadomasochistic tendencies. Johanna Jöckel, better known as Hana, would appear from time to time throughout the grounds of the Small Fortress, including the women's yard. Hana humiliated the female prisoners and took unconcealed pleasure in destroying their packages, which at least remotely reminded the prisoners of home and provided prisoners with extra food or clothing, and she was even capable of striking them severely. This is proven by the testimony of Eliška Setlova, among others, who said the following: "When we were entering the women's yard, Jöckel's daughter came to us twice with a whip. Once she pulled a female prisoner of about 30 years of age out of the 3rd row and beat her until she was left lying in the yard. The prisoner was not from our cell. I don't know her name. When Hana Jöckel left, the prisoners carried the wounded woman to her cell. The second time, Hana just walked around us. We stood in rows of 4 or 5 and left." Zdenka Marshunova described one of the common scenes. "We had received packages from home and hadn't looked into them when Jöckel and Hana came to the cell. There was a long wooden table in the cell and the packages were spread out on it. He said that we were like on holiday, overturned the table and stomped on the packages. His daughter Hana helped him stomp and swear." Hana Jöckel surprisingly also bullied and roughly physically assaulted men. Karl Solfrank testified that once the cook and prisoner named Damek came out of the canteen all swollen, saying that they would never go to the canteen again. Hana beat them. "I never found out how it happened. I guess Hana was drunk. The boys didn't want to go back to the canteen at any price." Although Johanna Jöckel did not act as a guard in the small fortress, the prisoners were afraid of her and preferred to avoid any contact with her if possible. Towards the end of the war, an epidemic of typhoid and typhus fever spread in the small fortress. This was due to both the overcrowding and to Heinrich Jöckel's personal decision to forbid prisoners to be issued with parcels of clean clothes from home. The typhus epidemic eventually killed up to 1,000 prisoners and raged in Theresienstadt long after the war. The town was closed until June 1946. After the war, Johanna was imprisoned and interrogated together with her father. Among many others, she was also accused of whipping the prisoners and shooting at them from the walls of the small fortress. Johanna denied all the charges. While Heinrich Jöckel stood trial and on the 26th of October 1946 was executed, Johanna never faced justice. However, she did not fare any better and died the same year. There are two contradictory accounts of the circumstances of Johanna's death. According to some sources, she died in prison of tuberculosis. According to others, however, she was massacred when former small fortress prisoners whom she had abused during the war had beaten her to death. She was 19 or 20 years old. There were no tears shed for Johanna Jöckel.
Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.